So you've done a lot of different types of deals, and I don't want to go through all of them, but I'd love to hear what was the worst one or the biggest learning experience, and then what was the best one before we get into like where you're going from here.
So I've discovered recently, talking to other local investors, I have a bit of a reputation for being all over the place, which I think is only partially deserved because my brain and what I research and the people I talk to and what I learn about is all over the place. But to me, it's like, there's no harm in looking. There's no harm in learning about that thing. But I was talking to somebody at a RIA luncheon one day, and we were talking about a couple of deals that I was looking at. And he said, you really need to focus. You need to find the thing that you're good at and just do that. And I just looked at him and I thought, I've only ever bought multifamily. That's all I've ever bought. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, I look at lots of other stuff. Because he started out having to look at storage. I had looked at assisted living. I had looked at just anything that moved. I was like, well, that's interesting. I like to learn, but I'd only ever bought multifamily and a couple of little single families, duplex, triplex. I had a 50 unit and had just put under contract 16 and 18 units in Little Rock. And I looked back on it and I thought to myself, like, I'm not all over the place. I may research lots of stuff. And sometimes you don't know if you like it until you try it. But at that point, the only things that I had actually been able to pull off were these multifamilies. And so I think you niche based on what you're actually doing. Maybe I would have bought a duplex and ended up in the industrial space if that had been the deal that worked out, and then I would have niched in that. But the deals that were working out were multifamily, which told me a couple of things. I was either just good at it, like, well, this wasn't that hard, where I was bad at maybe industrial or storage or something. Or I just was in that network of people who were bringing me those kinds of deals and people who could close those kinds of deals. And I didn't know anybody in assisted living. I didn't know anybody in medical office. So it's probably more who I was hanging out with than any innate talent on my part. But, I've expanded the network since then, and I have a lot more variety of people who do various types of things, but I've still only bought multifamily. So we are going into our first non-multifamily. We're turning this house that we live in into an assisted living, and that's kind of where the first rental I looked at kind of comes back into this. Wow. So this assisted living, we haven't started it yet. We're obviously still living here. We closed on our new house yesterday, and I'm just starting to move stuff over there. Nice. So going back to your original question, like what was the best deal and what was the worst deal? The worst deal was a single family house that I put under contract through a wholesaler, and he was pressuring me for, gotta get that $5,000 earnest money, gotta get that $5,000 non-refundable earnest money. And I had bought 2 houses from him before. I would totally buy a house from him again. It's just this one, I was more trusting his numbers. I hate running comps or looking up the comparables. And so I was kind of poking at it and not doing a very good job. He had done me right the previous 2. So I go and I put the $5,000 down and I was calling my hard money lenders. And by the time they called me back to tell me like, these comps are no good, these numbers aren't actually working, we can only loan this much on the house. I had a private money lender sort of lined up to help me out, but she was just not ready, she was like, this is all moving really fast. And so I ended up spending 4 or 5 days trying to figure out how to save this house, save this deal. Like, oh, well, maybe we can exit it as a vacation rental or a lease option, or instead of a flip, or we can rent it out for a while I cover that value. And where am I going to get this extra $50,000 from to close, because the hard money lender won't lend me all what I needed. And then I was trying to partner with the wholesaler, and he was really working hard to help me save this. So I ended up losing that $5,000. I just said, you know what, this is a bad deal. I got sucked in. I moved too fast. I didn't talk to my lender first before I put that money down. That was what I learned there. Your hard money lender is a good partner to you. They've been doing this a long time. They don't hate doing comps. They kind of do it for a living. So let them do what they do best, and you do what you do best. And I just should have put that money down before I had the word back from them on the comp.
Well, I mean, it's a great lesson for people to take away. I mean, there's several keys in there that you could have probably avoided losing $5,000, but at the same time, that might have been your best deal too. I mean, because it could have been a much larger loss. So, so that was good that you were able to just swallow the 5,000 and say, lesson learned?
Well, I think that some good things that came out of that, because I'm not the kind of person who's like, why did this happen? I lost $5,000. I'm the kind of person who goes in, well, that sucked. How can I not ever let that happen again? And so with more of I wouldn't call it a positive mindset. I tend to be a person who plans for worst case scenario. And I was always thinking about, hey, what if this happens? I'll do that, like a contingency planner. And it gets me, again, a reputation for being kind of negative. But on this one, I just have never really felt like, oh, I have all these adversities and life is so hard. I've just never felt that way, because everybody has crap that happens, and I'm no special snowflake for bad things or even good things happening too. So I told my husband I was very embarrassed, and I was like, I didn't want to tell you this happened. I wanted to spend a couple of days working on it and then come to you and say, hey, this bad thing almost happened, but listen to the great solution I came up with. And when I realized that I didn't want to tell him that was the first kind of inkling of where the distrust and hiding things can come from in people's lives. I know people who have gone to jail for cooking their books so that their numbers look better so they can sell their guru education. That was a very early teenage experience for me with a family that we knew. And other people who have gone to jail for or had to flee the country for running Ponzi schemes. And they did not know, they knew, they were in total denial that what they were doing was wrong. And to this day, the worst one, he still swears that he did nothing wrong. He just had some investments go bad. Just has no clue that he was in the wrong, that he was doing something illegal. He convinced himself it was okay. Yeah. And so when that moment, like, don't tell your husband because you gotta fix it first. I was like, that's what those Ponzi scheme guys feel like. Don't tell your investors, fix it first, and then come back and give them the good news. So I immediately called him. And I said, hey, I got to tell you what I did. And instead of being like, why did you do that? Oh, like, that was $5,000. He just paused and he said, I know you're embarrassed, but it's okay. It's only money. And I know you'll make it back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maintaining that relationship between us where we've very clearly earmarked money that's for the investment business versus money that is for our personal household use. That's what saved that one, because that money was earmarked to invest. We had a certain amount that we put in my business bank account. And he's, on the business bank account, right? But it's this business bank account. Yeah. And I lost some of it. It's real estate. You think you're never going to lose money. He obviously knew that someday I could have a deal go wrong or get scammed or who knows. So that helped out, keeping that separate, being very, very honest up front, keeping him in the loop on what was going on. And I thought, so what I learned out of that was, look what a great husband I have. Look what a great support I have in this business, because we set it up in the right way so that he wouldn't feel like he just lost his ATV that he was saving up for, that I just spent on nothing.
Yeah. But I think that's why it's so important too to have, I'm huge on like goals, and I did a webinar on goal setting at the beginning of the year, and because if you're focused on long-term goals, you're going to have, like you said, if you're in real estate investing, you're going to have unforeseen issues that pop up. And so it's a lot easier to get beyond it and say, okay, have I moved closer to the goal that I have long-term, and not be so bogged down in the day-to-day, which is easier said than done.
Yeah, I think weight loss and fitness, that's always been an interest of mine. And when you're trying to lose weight or gain weight in the gym, right? Like, you're going to see your scale going like this. And I always used to joke that going on a diet or losing weight is more like skiing moguls than downhill. And that applies to anything that we're working on. So I love that you're distinguishing eye on the long-term goal helps you to keep small setbacks in perspective, because it's natural to have a little fluctuation. Yeah. So I think that did make a big difference in our ability to recover from that and walk away from that saying, what did we learn? How did we strengthen our business and our relationship through this? So in that way, it wasn't a loss. I've spent $2,500 or $5,000 on a conference where I did not learn as much as that field taught me.
Yeah. So we'll stick with you longer.
Yeah, put in the education column.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so not to dwell on the negative side then. So let's transition to your best deal and which will probably lead us into what you're continuing to pursue in the future.
I think that the two deals that I have right now, I've got 3 commercial deals that I'm working on. One, my 50 unit in Idaho. My second one is those 2 buildings in Little Rock, Arkansas. And then the third one is the new development that we're working on in downtown Salt Lake City. Downtown Salt Lake City, we just closed on it. I have no idea what's going to happen with that, right? Positive mindset, thinking positively, but it's a large development and it could, who knows? So then we're going to leave that one off the table because that's like a baby I haven't given birth to yet.
Okay. I'll have you back on in a year or so and we can discuss that one.
Exactly. But the Idaho one I think is the best deal because it was my first commercial deal. And it gave me the confidence and the credibility I needed to then go out there and get a lot bigger, a lot faster, and think, wow, that was a huge jump from a triplex to a 50 unit. And what I learned and what I had to put together and the people I met and the team that we put together to make that happen was huge. Probably the best deal from that term, learning, credibility. The best deal financially is definitely this Little Rock one. I mean, head and shoulders. We're probably going to, I don't even want to say this out loud. We'll have those a little over a year. Our intention was to hold them longer, but my partner, John, is like the financial whiz guru, and he keeps rebuilding our models. And every time he does, it just gets better because he's using the real-time stuff that we've already done and then updating the model back from speculation to here's what we've actually done, and it keeps improving. So those things are going to 3 or 4x. Instead of holding them 5 or 6 years for 30% return, we're going to hold it for a year and a half for like a 200% return. It's crazy. So I'm super excited.
So those are 16 unit per
16 and 18. Yeah. I wish I put more money in that deal. I was so proud of myself. I'm like, I only put 10 grand in this deal. And now I'm like, I should have put $1 million in that deal.
Nice. Yeah. Wow. So is that one that was already operating, or you had to just like fully rehab it and kind of stabilize it from there?
It was stabilized when we bought it, but it was one of those places just like our 50 unit in Idaho where it's kind of being run like a slumlord building. So people are living there, but you're not really sure why, because like it was pretty bad. Like sad almost, some of the conditions that were going on. So all 3 of the properties that we have right now that we're rehabbing were being run very poorly like that and needed a lot of rehab. And so people are like, don't invest in Class D properties because you can make a lot of money in them, but they're a lot of work and they're a specialized skill set that you don't have as a beginner. Mm-hmm. And I kind of felt like, and that's what my husband said the first day we drove up to the Idaho complex and we're sitting there in the parking lot. And I had my realtor with me who wanted to partner up at the time. We ended up not, but he's still great. I would still do a deal with him. And he was excited. I was excited. And my husband's like, I thought you said you weren't buying Class D properties. I'm like, this isn't a Class D property. Look at the neighborhood. It's a Class C neighborhood. This property just needs some love. And there's a lot of money to be made in fixing up unloved, poorly managed slumlord properties. And so we did the same thing in Little Rock. We went in and we said, okay, this neighborhood is not the best neighborhood, but it's definitely better than what this building is. Hmm. And you zoom in on the crime maps and the crime is all your building. Like it's dark blue and everything else around it is like normal or light blue. You're like, I can fix that. I can't fix the neighborhood, but I can fix this. So I have definitely found there's a lot of money to be made in Class D properties. And my niche has been Class D, Class C, Class D in a Class C neighborhood. And I think it's a great place to get started because they're much more affordable and there's much less competition, but have some construction management experience or get someone on your team who does, because and a property manager who's a bulldog with where's your rent, and they're very good at evictions and they're very good at screening tenants because you have to completely redo who's moving into this building, from people who can't pass a background check who are paying cash to people who can pass a background check and are actually holding down jobs. And it may be working class blue collar jobs, but they can pass a background check. So property manager who's experienced with that type of property, and it's somebody on the team who's really good at construction management. And I think in Little Rock, we really lucked out with the partners that we've got in Dallas because they're close enough to drive up there and they have a ton of construction management experience because they flip houses to rentals all the time. So that ended up being a great marriage there.